On my right side, Sophie Veld, Vice President of the group, Mr. Verhofstadt, President of the group, and Cecilia Wikstrom, our spokesperson on the refugee crisis. I give the floor to Mr. Verhofstadt.
Jeroen, so first of all, thank you very much for your presence at this press conference that we organize at the occasion of this extraordinary European Council on the refugee crisis, because we have taken the initiative today to send a letter to the 28 members, heads of states and heads of government of the European Council, in which we try to elaborate a comprehensive and global response to this huge crisis that we are seeing today. Because we think that the only outcome of this European Council can be a global approach, a new global approach to this refugee crisis based on a more coherent, more intense European approach and integration. Today it's a little bit, I should say, everybody is looking to Europe and is pointing the finger to the European Union when we are talking about this refugee crisis, but in all opinion, it's a lack of European Union and a lack of European integration, what is one of the key problems in the refugee crisis of today. So we are proposing in that letter to the 20 heads of states and governments an approach based on five key reforms. And we hope that by the end of the day, maybe at midnight, there's going to be a conclusion on that. The first approach, and we're going to afterwards, after the press conference, give you the concrete annex of the letter to everybody of you, is an immediate European support for the United Nations Human Rights Agency. You have to know that the first priority must be to give enough tools, instruments, money towards the refugees in the camps in third countries, so that we can guarantee decent living conditions in these camps, what is not the case today. The Union's contribution to the UN Refugee Agency must be increased dramatically, because what we see today is a lack of funding, a lack of funding in the sense that only 43% of the money for these camps, for the refugee camps in Lebanon, in Jordan, and in Turkey, has arrived in the United Nations. So there is a lack of 57%. More than half of the money is lacking for the moment for funding these camps. In total, it concerns 770 million US dollar missing until the end of the year in the next 3 months. And on top of that, there is a second agency who is involved in these refugee camps. That's the World Food Programme, who is mainly giving a monthly rate of 30 US dollar per refugee in these camps. While it will be, there is only funding for 13 US dollar. For the moment. So there the gap in the next 3 months is 292 million US dollars. So in total, what we are lacking for the moment, only for October, November, December, I'm not talking about 2016 or 2007, I'm talking about the urgent needs for the UN in these camps in the coming weeks, in the coming 3 months, is in total 1 billion US dollar. So nearly also 1 billion euro that is missing. So the first thing we ask to the Council of today is immediately to decide today to a transfer of 1 billion funding immediately to the 2 UN agencies who are responsible for the refugee camps around Syria. So as you know, in Jordan, Lebanon, and in Turkey. And the second thing what we ask is that Europe should organize a new donor conference where not only the European Union and the member states of the European Union are invited, but there could be also a participation and a significant commitment by Gulf and Arab states in such a donor conference that can be organized, in my opinion, on a short-term time basis. We have to know for the moment that the last conference on this was in March of this year, but in the meanwhile we are in a completely different environment with more needs and more difficulties. So that's our first line that we ask to the European Council in the letter is transfer now immediately, not pledging. Pledging, we know that how it works. It's saying, yeah, I'm going to pay in the future. It's paying immediately the 1 billion to the UN so that they have enough money for the coming 3 months. And secondly, organize this donor conference in Europe the fastest as possible, also inviting Gulf and Arab states. The second is to launch a European peace initiative because the situation in Syria deteriorates every day. It's also clear that Russia is creating facts on the ground with a military build-up. We shall certainly not solve the problem. And what we think about is an initiative led by the EU to engage the US, Russia, China, and also Turkey, Iran, and Saudi Arabia to agree on a peace plan to end the conflict in Syria so that there is an agreement that the regional powers not use Syrian territory anymore to do their proxy wars. So, and two things are key in this. Eliminating the Islamic State and secondly, getting rid of Assad. That are the two main conditions that has to be put on the table to find an agreement on such an initiative, including giving assistance to the Free Syrian Army, because it's the only democratic moderate force still in some parts, acting in some parts of Syria. So our call to the European Council for immediate action is that the High Representative Mogherini today receives from the European Council a mandate to start to prepare to organize in the context of the UN General Assembly in New York the work so that key players can be put around the table for such an initiative. There is the UN General Assembly for the moment in New York, so it's a good moment to do that. To have contacts with all the members of the Security Council and the key players to see if such an initiative can be launched. And if the European Council today is deciding on a mandate for Mogherini, that should be an enormous asset, an enormous basis for such an initiative in the coming days in the UN in New York. The third element, the third call to the European Council is now to recognize that if you have a Schengen area, it's impossible to continue with national border controls and national border management. It's time to recognize that we need a European border management system, and that is something completely different than the Frontex agency that we know today, and that is an agency that is mainly composed by 3-4 member states who contribute to Frontex. It has to be a European system to receive, to assist, to register, to screen people who arrive. Will it be by land? Will it be by sea? And it's also, in our point of view, such a European border management system is key if you want to put in place, in practice, the relocation programs that otherwise cannot function, cannot works. So that is the third decision that they have to take. And on the line of the immediate action that the European Council can take in this field is to activate Article 222 of the treaty, that is the European Solidarity Clause, that gives the possibility for the European Union to send people to countries in need for the management of their borders. And that's the case in Greece, that's the case in Croatia, that's maybe the case in other countries who are asking the help of the European Union. Apparently not Hungary, but at least Croatia and at least Greece have a lack of management of their borders. And so based on the European Solidarity Clause, Article 222 of the treaty, it's possible to help them in controlling, receive people, assist, register people, and to create the necessary facilities and to send also the necessary people to do that. So that is the immediate action to be taken. Launch Article 222 of the treaty in such an urgent situation as we are today. The fourth call to the European Council is to start to establish this single European asylum system. I'm gonna not go into the details. We did it already a few times in the past in our paper, and certainly Cecilia will come back to this in a few moments. A radical overhaul of the Dublin regulation is necessary. It doesn't work anymore. It is not European in essence. So we need, based on the proposals of the Commission, the permanent system that the Commission is proposing. And there, the immediate action we are asking for is the start of the relocation process of the 160,000 refugees from Greece and Italy. And it's not by accident that I'm saying that, because we didn't even start to relocate the first decision that we have taken a few months ago. So we are now in the second decision on an additional number of 120,000 refugees, in total 160,000, but we didn't even implement the relocation of the 40,000. And so our proposal is, immediate action is to start the relocation process now, and also to make it possible that the right to temporary protection in the Union, those people who have the right for temporary protection in the Union should be given the possibility to work also, so that they want to work, they will work inside the European Union, and that the restrictions that exist today are lifted. And then finally, the fifth call we have to the European Council is that we need a real European economic migration policy. We know very well, everybody knows, that naturally the asylum system is sometimes abused for other reasons, and the only way to deal with this problem is to put in place a real European migration policy by generalizing the blue card. And the blue card system that exists today has to replace the 28 national economic migration system that exists, and that are all different. All different. There is no one. All countries have different systems for the moment. Some based more on the Canadian experience, others based on the American experience. Most of them based on non-experience at all. Certainly not on the Canadian and American one, and mainly closing the borders. There is an exception of Sweden, Cecilia, that I want to underline today. But it's urgent that we do something in that field also. And there, the immediate action we call for is that the Commission puts on the table a new legislative initiative to set up a new EU mandatory blue card system, replacing the 28 national systems that we have. So that are the five reform lines we propose to the European Council. But it's not theory. We have in every of these fields, we ask for immediate action by a decision that can be taken today. We shall not have tomorrow a new asylum system, but they can start to engage the relocation of the 160,000. We cannot have tomorrow a new migration policy, but the Commission, they can oblige the Commission to come forward with a common blue card system on economic migration. We cannot naturally give money, we cannot solve the refugee crisis in a few seconds, but we can transfer the money, the 1 billion, to the UN and organize a new donor conference. And at the same time, the European Council can give a direct mandate to Mogherini to start now next week at the occasion of the General Assembly of the UN, a new initiative in which also a number of countries are involved. We think that it's impossible to continue like that with some member states who are putting themselves outside, really, the European framework. But I give the floor to Sophie to explain that initiative that we are preparing.
Okay, thank you. Well, we noticed that there are violations of the European fundamental rights, rule of law, and the basic rules of liberal democracy in all member states. But one has been violating those rules systematically and in a very serious manner for many years now. And it is no surprise that our group feels that the so-called Article 7 procedure should now be activated in the case of Hungary. Hungary has violated many rules in many different areas in recent years, but if we see the measures that have been taken now in the face of the refugee crisis, we feel that they are completely out of line with the values that the European Union represents. The Article 7 procedure, contrary to what some people think, is not the immediate suspension of a member state. It is a series of steps that starts with, let's say, mapping out the situation, investigating the situation, giving the member state an opportunity to respond, to mend its ways, and only in last instance it may lead to the suspension. But we feel that the situation is serious enough in Hungary to justify this. And I also think if we allow situations like these to arise, if we tolerate that kind of behavior by the member states, then we lose all credibility as a community of values. We have rules, we have treaties, we have the Charter of Fundamental Rights, and the rules should be respected, just like in the case of the Stability Pact, or let's say state aid rules or other European rules. If a member state violates the rules, then that member state, then the European Commission should initiate proceedings against that member state. And that applies as well to fundamental rights, or indeed even more to fundamental rights. And therefore the ALDE group proposes that the Article 7 procedure will be triggered in the case of Hungary.
Yeah, that said, it's on top of the infringement procedures that the European Commission shall launch today against a number of member states. So the breaking news is that there are going to be a number of infringement procedures launched against a number of member states because they did not apply the rules and the legislation on asylum. But it's on top of that, it's a separate procedure. Cecilia?
Thank you very much. And first of all, I think that we need to underline that what we need to see in Europe today is unity, not necessarily unanimity, which was demonstrated yesterday, thanks God. So we need to see a Europe that functions, that can respond fairly, because it is our duty. It's still not an option, as Mr. Orban and others want to put it, to show solidarity and guarantee asylum seekers a legally safe process and fair access to the assessment of their asylum claims. This is not about generosity, it's an obligation, full stop. And every member state is equally obliged to this. Secondly, all EU member states must respond jointly to the humanitarian needs that we see today. Anything else goes against the core values and principles upon which this European Union was based. It is a disgrace and completely unacceptable to see how desperate people in need for international protection and safety are met at Europe's gate by tear gas and water cannons at the border between Hungary and Serbia. This is absolutely unacceptable, and we must not only regret it, we must absolutely say that this is simply not acceptable for behavior from a European member state. Hungarian military are today allowed to use weapons towards the refugees, if needed. Hungarian citizens wanting to protect or give shelter to refugees run the risk today of being imprisoned for a sentence of 5 years. If that would have been the case in Sweden in the early 90s, I would have been a prisoner because I took people into my private home. And you know what? I'm proud of that today. Orban regime's lack of solidarity with people in need and lack of solidarity with other member states and other European institutions and in breach of the fundamental European values is appalling, and the EU must react immediately, as Sophie has put it, putting the pressure on the Hungarian regime before it's too late. And during the summit today, we urge that the EU leaders do wake up and finally face the challenges ahead of us, that the European Council will take action and present a comprehensive strategy, the one that Guy has outlined, in line with the proposals that we presented as a political group way far, long before the crisis was as evident as it is today. We did that, the ALDE blueprint, and you have it. You have possibly access to that today afterwards. Well, all in all, it's simply not an option anymore. This has to be European compulsory commitment by the institutions as well as all the member states.
Thank you. Yeah, Sophie, you wanted to add?
One short... Yeah, an additional reason why we hope that the Council this afternoon will take these decisions is that whilst yesterday's decision is very welcome, we can all see that that is not the way to go. And I think we should also realize that it's not enough. Yesterday's ministers may think that they have settled the matter for once and for all, but I think everybody who reads a newspaper sees that there will be more refugees coming this way. Or more migrants. So we need a long-term solution, and I find it appalling to see how 28 national governments simply not only refuse to take their responsibility, but refuse to acknowledge reality. And it is about time. They owe it to their citizens to give us a longer-term perspective rather than, wait for every problem to spiral out of control and become a crisis when in reality the current flow of refugees that we witness, although it may be big, it is manageable. The European Union can manage this if we do it together, but then we need to stop stumbling from one crisis to the next, so we call on the Council to take their responsibility.